Okay, good evening everyone. Thank you for coming. Nice to see you. I don't think I need to introduce myself much because, as Raymond just said, I am the speaker of the world famous Kyushu Nerd Nite #2 talk about bits and bytes, which, as you can see on YouTube, has got 82 million views. They're in millions, right, Raymond? Yeah. Wedged nicely there between love, war, and death. So can't really get much better than that. So let's see if we can do better today. This is the same slide I used last time, just a quick introduction. My name's Adam. I am from the UK. I went to Edinburgh for university, and I've lived there in Scotland for 10 years before moving to Japan. I've been here 10 years now. Worked at Lion for half of that, and then I've been working at a couple of tech startups for the last few years. I also run a website called retirewiki.jp, which is an English website about life in Japan. And it's a wiki, so you can edit it. So if anyone's interested, please check it out. That's me. I don't use Twitter anymore, but I have Mastodon, and I'll talk about that later because this is a talk about microblogging. Just a quick alert that somebody dropped out today, I think, so I'm covering. So if this is just completely incomprehensible or incoherent, sorry about that, bear with me. So the title is Blockchain and Microblogging, but it's not a talk about microblogging on the blockchain, if that's what you're expecting, so sorry about that. So I'm going to talk about blockchain first, and then I'm going to talk about microblogging. So everyone's heard of blockchain, everyone's heard of Bitcoin, right? So I'll start with Bitcoin. Just a quick history. So did you want the previous one? Just a quick history of Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin white paper came out in 2008. Okay, anyone can read that. It is about a peer-to-peer. It says here, peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Right? Turns out it's not really turned into a cash system. It's more like speculative investment, really. But anyway, it came out in 2008, and the first Bitcoin block was mined in 2009. And that block contains in its data a quote from an edition of the Times newspaper, the British newspaper. And the quote is this headline here: "Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." And you can see, like, this 2009, it's the middle of the financial crisis. The banks are collapsing. So there's this motivation for an alternative, right? Also, unfortunately, the other title on the edition is "Israel prepares to send tanks and troops into Gaza." And that's 15 years ago. So blockchain, who knows what a blockchain is? You know what a blockchain is. Okay, can you explain it? I'm going to attempt to explain it, but it's Nerd Night, so I can't go into too much detail, but I'll try. This is my yawn slide. So my definition of a blockchain is a distributed append-only ledger, okay? What does that mean? What's a ledger? A ledger basically is just a list of records, okay? So that's it basically. So a blockchain itself has got nothing to do with cryptocurrency. And so everyone kind of thinks Bitcoin, right? It's also, people have heard of NFTs. They use blockchain, but a blockchain is not really related to NFTs either. It's just a database. It's a database with two properties, okay? One is it's append-only. What does append-only mean? It means you can only add to it. Like the law. So, you know, a law, you can't go back and edit old laws. You can only pass new laws that change the effect of the previous ones. And also the other one is that anybody can have a copy of it. It's not stored in a specific place. So that's blockchain. And Bitcoin is just transactions stored on a blockchain, basically. So the blockchain is a database, Bitcoin's transactions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how Bitcoin works. And Bitcoin is distributed, right? We talked about the paper. It said Bitcoin is distributed. The way it achieves this is using cryptography. And it uses cryptography in two places. One is for transactions. The other is the blockchain. So for transactions in Bitcoin, it uses a technology called public key cryptography, which is mathematics. I'm not going to go into the details. But a quick summary is you have two keys, okay, public and a private key. And you sign a message with your private key, which you can validate with your public key. And to give an analogy, if you think of a check, does anyone remember checks, like bank checks? And you have an inkan, like a Japanese seal. If you sign, your inkan is like your private key, and you stamp the check, and then the image is the public key, so anyone can see that you signed that check, but only you can sign it, right? But unlike a inkan, which is easily forgeable, public key cryptography is not, it's more secure. So basically, what happens with this is that, say I have a Bitcoin, I want to send it to Raymond, then I basically use my private key that only I have, and I send a message that says, I send this Bitcoin to Raymond, just broadcast the message into the network, okay? And then Raymond can just write that down, and it's recorded, Adam's Bitcoin is now Raymond's Bitcoin, right? That's how that works. But there's a problem with this, because if it was a bank, and I said, please send Raymond 1,000 yen, they'll say, okay. But then if I said, okay, now send the same 1,000 yen to Wataru, the bank says, no, you can't do that because you already sent it to Raymond. But this is Bitcoin, there's no bank. So I could just use my same private key, write another message, I send the same Bitcoin to Wataru. And then now they both have a thing that says they have the Bitcoin. What's going on there? So that's where blockchain comes in, okay? So we got these transactions going with cryptography, but blockchain is the method to use to make sure you can't spend the same thing twice, basically. So you've got one unique list of records. And the way that we happen is we combine the transactions into a block. So let's say there's one that says I send a Bitcoin to Raymond, one that says to Wataru. Well, we put Raymond's one in the block, and then we sign the block. But to make sure no one can just make another block that says, okay, Wataru as well, like we make it difficult to make a block, okay? And this is how the blockchain stuff, so this is what mining is in blockchain. So the way that we make it difficult is we add a puzzle that you have to solve, a computationally complex puzzle. And the properties of the puzzle are, it's very difficult to find the answer, but once you have the answer, it's very easy to confirm that is the answer. So you find this answer to this problem, you put it in the block with the transactions and sign it, and there you've got a block on the blockchain. And so the next question is, why would anybody do this? Why would anybody spend their computing resources to help basically do what is a clearing system for Bitcoin? And the answer is you get a reward for doing it, okay? So that's the motivation. And then this happens every 10 minutes, somebody produces a block. So my thing that says Raymond got the Bitcoin is here. And then as more blocks are added, more people have solved the problems. So it's much harder to change the history, basically. So that's a transaction, that's a blockchain. There's another problem with this, though, which is that this computation here, this reward is worth a lot of money. So a lot of people are competing. So it's consuming a lot of energy. And I calculated the energy consumption of Bitcoin. If you consider an electric kettle, like a water heater, is like 2 kilowatts, 2,000 watts, then the energy consumption of Bitcoin is equivalent to 7 million electric kettles, okay? So I don't know how much energy the whole financial system consumes, but these blocks every 10 minutes are consuming 7 kettle watts of power. It reminds me of this character from Warhammer 40,000. I don't know if anyone knows Warhammer 40,000. He's the emperor of mankind, and he requires a sacrifice of 1,000 psychic people every day to keep him going. Anyway, why am I talking about all this stuff? Message cryptography, blockchains and stuff. The point is there's no bank, right? It's distributed. Anybody can send a transaction, anybody can sign that block, as long as you can find the answer to the problem first. But there's another problem with this, which is that if you want to participate, if you want to send a Bitcoin, if you want to receive a Bitcoin or verify anything, you need to have a copy of the blockchain. So we talked about the blockchain. And the blockchain is currently the Bitcoin blockchain is over 500 gigabytes in size. So everybody that wants to participate in Bitcoin has to have this, right?
Where is this 500 gigabytes?
Everybody that wants to do a transaction on the blockchain has to have a copy of it. Okay, so it's not practical. So what happens in practice is we add a third party in, like a Bitcoin exchange or a digital wallet company that has the blockchain, and you just trust them. So we've put the trust back in that we were trying to get rid of, which is just, and someone can appeal to the exchange and say, that was fraudulent, can you reverse it, right? And the whole point is you shouldn't be able to do that, or hack the exchange. Okay, so that's blockchain. What's the relation to microblogging? Well, just to talk about microblogging for a bit. In the beginning, there was Twitter, right? Everyone knows Twitter. This is Jack Dorsey. He was the ex-CEO of Twitter. His first tweet. This was sold. That was its original name. This was sold as an NFT. So I'm not sure if I'm even allowed to put this on here for millions of dollars, but whatever. His bio right now is Bitcoin and chill. So that's my nice segue into the microblogging part of the thing. How many people use Twitter, by the way? Yeah, half. So less than half, actually, or half of the people that admitted. Before Twitter, going back, there is the web, right? And there still is the web. Anybody can make a website. You don't even need a server. Well, you do need a server, but it can just be your computer at home, as long as you've got an internet connection. Anybody can make a website. And then there's blogs. Blogs are also just websites. Some services like Blogger, Medium, you can make it very easy to make a blog, but you have to use their service. Others, like WordPress, is probably the most famous one. Also Ghost, like you can use their service, or you can make your own, host it on your own server, right? But basically, anybody, the same as a website, anybody can just make a blog. You just make it and it's done. And then social media came along, okay? And social media is not decentralized like the web is. It's kind of the antithesis of the web, because these services, nobody can say, I'm going to make a profile and put it on the internet, right? If you want a Twitter account, you have to make an account at Twitter. Same with all of the others, and YouTube. I didn't put YouTube up. But these companies and the internet, web, are all made by computer geeks, right? And computer geeks like the decentralized philosophy. So some people have tried to make alternatives to these companies for the same social media services. So like for example, Facebook, there is a company called Diaspora, not company, a product, service even. It's kind of old. I don't think it really took off, but it's there. And then for Twitter, there are a couple of interesting ones. One's called Mastodon. One's called Blue Sky. Blue Sky is funded by the ex-CEO of Twitter, which is funny. I think he originally wanted it, the plan was to make Twitter more open, but it didn't work out like that. Mastodon is implemented on an open standard run by the World Wide Web Consortium, which you could check. Oh, by the way, Diaspora, I said it didn't take off. It's the one that Google copied when they made Google+. But then Google Plus didn't take off, so whatever. There's another one, Threads. Does anyone know Threads? I haven't used it myself, but basically Threads is kind of, well, it's Facebook's, this is my opinion, Facebook's opportunistic thing to get on the Twitter bandwagon when everything started to go crazy, right? But Threads implements this protocol, ActivityPub it's called, that Mastodon implements. But it's not really an honest attempt at joining the open platform, because it's called, there's this thing called Embrace, Extend, Extinguish. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's like if you're a company and you want to protect your interests, you embrace the open technology to get the people on board. Then you add more features to it, proprietary features that only work on your product, so everyone uses your product, and then you cut off the openness, right? So everyone's locked in. And that's what they did with Messenger. So Messenger, you used to be able to use any app you wanted, but now you can only use Messenger or WhatsApp or Line in Japan. Anyway, so Mastodon and Blue Sky are the alternatives to Twitter, which are both microblogging platforms. And Mastodon is like the web. Sorry? No? Can you see these? No. Well, I'm on Fostodon, by the way. So Mastodon is like anybody can make a server, same as you can with a blog or a website. So you can have your own, or you can join someone else's. And each server is like a little Twitter. So you can see the messages on that server, but unlike Twitter, they also talk to each other. So you can have an account, and you can see the messages, follow people from other servers. But there are some issues, like it's not the same as Twitter, right? There is an admin for each server, and if you don't get on with the admin or something, and you decide, I want to leave, then if you want to migrate, you can take your followers with you, but you can't take your posts. So they all stay, and then you have to change your ID. So it's not Twitter, it's just different. I use it, I quite like it, but it's a different thing. And then, does anybody recognize this? it's Blue Sky, okay? It looks like this is Twitter, this is Blue Sky, okay? So they basically just copy Twitter. But that's Mastodon. It looks a little bit different. Yeah, I talked a lot faster than I was planning to. I'm not going to go into this, don't worry. This is Blue Sky's protocol. So Mastodon, I talked about, they had an open protocol. Blue Sky also made their own alternative one, which is what this is. And the idea of this is to make a platform that is basically the same as Twitter, the same functionality. There's one service that everyone can use, but the back end is open, not like open, it is open. So anybody can take any component of this and theoretically host it themselves. So as a user, oh sorry, I'm screwing up the sound. As a user, you could say, I don't like that this company stores the data in this country. I want it to store in a different country, and change provider. And no one would know. All of your followers, that would be transparent to your followers. It depends who your followers are. Yeah, and there's all this stuff. Maybe if you're a huge company, you wanted to provide a service and you don't like how the search works, you could re-implement the search component or something. It's complicated, but the idea is open. And it's run by the Blue Sky Social Public Benefit Company. And they actually promote people to try and run it themselves. So it's kind of interesting. It's like Twitter, but open. I don't know if it'll take off, but I'm kind of curious to see if it will. So yeah, how is this related to blockchain? Well, it's kind of two different approaches to having decentralization on the web for services that weren't decentralized before, right? So for blockchain, it's trying to replace trust in an entity with protocols, cryptographic protocols. But then it's got some issues like you have to use the computation resources and what else? The data size. And you have to have some trust eventually because we are social beings, right? And then there's the Fediverse, which is trying to make the social media options more decentralized by having alternatives. Interesting to see how it's going to work out. I'm not sure. I have accounts on both of these. Fostodon is my Mastodon one, but there I'm mostly just talking about tech stuff. So, and Blue Sky, I don't know how I'm going to use it yet, but yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. So, we got some good amount of time for some questions. So, yeah, floor is open.
So, you talked a lot about trust, and we need to trust someone. I would say a lot of us have to trust the government, even if we don't want to. What do you think the government's role should be in open standards? Should they be promoting the standard, or should they be running their own Mastodon server or something else? How do you think the government should interact with it?
What do I think the government should do?
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily our government, but any government.
It's a good question. I'm not sure. It's funny, Bitcoin is kind of a little bit anti-government, right?
Yeah.
Because the governments were supporting the financial institutions that caused the financial crisis. So there's obviously the person who created, or the group of people who created Bitcoin are anonymous, so you don't know what their motivation was, but it feels a little bit like it's anti-government. For openness, yeah, I'm not sure. I think it could be like a shift between, currently for social media especially, companies are producing the services, but maybe more like an internet service or a phone number or electricity. If it becomes more like a social product that everyone expects, maybe they regulate more. I don't know.
Well, a little bit similar kind of things. But the company has to have this physical something in their own countries. Mm-hmm. And countries have a border. And I'm not sure what the border and this kind of thing is not borderless.
Yeah.
So how can these consist together or live together in the world?
That's a good question. I don't know. So for Blue Sky at least, well, for Mastodon there are different servers, right? So I mean, servers can block each other.
Yeah. That's
one way. But then obviously you can work around the blocks. Blue Sky, by the way, this is a screenshot from a paper that you can read if you're actually interested in the technology. But yeah, anyone can connect to a VPN and get around country borders. So I don't know how to enforce that.
So actually, you're ongoing and
Yeah.
find something to overcome it.
I think
Yeah,
so.
it'd be like data laws in Europe and America. So as soon as you get to a certain size, they'll bring you under that. So moving data around and controlling data. Well, if it gets big enough.
Legislate for the data control.
it'd be under that.
And then so for Blue Sky, they have these things called, I can't remember what the P stands for, data store. So the data is stored in these data stores, and so this grey block here is Blue Sky, the company, but they're saying someone else could have alternative data stores. So this could be in another country, but then they talk to each other. So yeah, I don't know what the restrictions would be there.
So is this kind of like a black or white scenario, or are there kind of like intermediate sorts of services that kind of have sort of the like oversight, but like for example, like I'm thinking of Discord, but I'm guessing that's not actually an accurate example.
The chat.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So
I
that's
mean,
just one company.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. So I'm like, I'm wondering if there are like any examples of different gradations of level of centralization.
The problem is usability, I think. So
Okay.
there are, for chat,
Yeah.
there are lots of open source, open freely available chats. There's Matrix, XMPP, but it's difficult to use. And then people are like, I don't know what to do. I just
Yeah.
want it to be easy.
Yeah.
And then only the companies have made usable products. There's no balance between.
I see.
And Blue Sky and Mastodon are kind of Blue. I think I just exited it. Blue Sky is aiming to be user friendly, right? It's got a lot of complexity, but it wants to just be easy to use. So maybe
Yeah.
that's a good balance.
Most.
But it's made by one company, but the company could theoretically cease existing,
Mhm.
and the thing would still
Yeah.
work. But if Twitter ceased existing, which almost happened,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be there.
So I guess that's the condition that differentiates these kinds of services from one another. If the creator of that service were to disappear, these kinds of services would still be able to exist because they aren't dependent on that mother entity.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Another point as well, I think, is the fact that some of these social media sites are completely closed to search engines. So when actually you search for some content on the internet, such as Google, Bing, or whatever, you can't actually find things like on Instagram or Twitter or some of these social media accounts. The information is completely locked, so you actually have to have an account in order to actually view the content. I think that's also the
Well, Twitter did that, right?
yeah.
And
That's right.
Reddit is the opposite. Reddit forced people to keep their accounts open.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Right. I think there's a big debate right now about this open and closed internet, the ability to be able to actually search content.
and with blockchain, everything's public. So,
Sure.
Yeah, we talk about the crypto and blockchain. Some banks they also implement like the blockchain
yeah,
to compete with the crypto.
yeah.
So personally, do you think that the crypto can slow the inflation?
Can crypto slow inflation?
Slow the inflation.
Slow inflation. That's
Because
one of my
inflation from the
negative-
government, they print a lot of money.
But that's Bitcoin's objective, right? So for Bitcoin, it has a fixed amount of 21 million Bitcoins. And that's defined into the protocol. There can't be more. So it's actually deflationary because once you get to 21 million, it's stopped. So it depends what your definition of inflation is. I'm not an economist, but if
No,
it's
it take it very easy. In the past, in the States,
yeah,
1950 something, $1 can buy 10 candy.
yeah,
But now you only eat half of the candy. These inflations, like last year we can buy like a dozen of egg, like 200 yen, but now it's 300 or something. Because of the government print a lot of money.
printing the money,
Yes, they can.
and they can't do that
This is being paid off.
with Bitcoin at least. Other cryptocurrencies, they
Yes.
yeah.
I'm curious that can the cryptocurrency slow the
Well, if
inflation?
a country successfully implemented cryptocurrency, maybe it could, but I don't think they would because they want to control. Governments want to control the money supply. And one country did. Is it El Salvador or something? They kind of tried to implement. Is it Bitcoin they use? They use something, but I think they're not really using it. So I don't think so because I think practically they would. And Bitcoin was trying to be a currency, but it's not really, is it, at the moment? So.
Thank you.
Would you
think about the other, because when everyone talks about big blockchain, they always say, oh, it's energy intensive, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's like companies that like find excess heat and like take that to run their mining, and also like places where it's hard to get to when it needs to build lots of infrastructure classically, but now you drop a computer in the middle of nowhere and you can't get to, then it does the mining using that excess energy. So
if you find a way to do it without the energy, then that's without wasting energy.
Yeah.
That would be good. It does require. It's just like the design of Bitcoin is like that proof of work thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just like there is no purpose for that other than to solve the problem. So the energy source, I guess, is not important.
Any questions? So a little bit of time for more questions. You don't want to wait, so.
Not quite sure how many of the audience here are in the fields of IT and or familiar with the concepts, but me myself, like not familiar. So that's why like my question might sound a little bit like like out of the world, but I'm just wondering why would you mind explaining to us, the lay people, why we should care about the decentralization?
Why would you care about decentralization?
Yeah, in terms of whatever, like be it the data science, or be it about the currency, or be it about information storing.
I don't have a slide on that. The point is to not rely on one entity that could be a point of failure in the system. So, like I said, anybody can make their own website, right? And the internet is designed to be like that. I mean, it was originally a military purpose. The internet is why it was designed to be decentralized. So there wasn't a single point of failure. But also we can enjoy the benefits of that. So the point is that not having that one failure point. So if Twitter goes down or Facebook goes down, all of that content is lost, right? All the content is lost. Or if you get told by one of these companies, your account is now closed, and nobody's exempt from that. You can be the president of America and your account can be shut down. So you have no recourse to do alternatives. But if there are other options, then so it's a limited failure, not having a single point of failure, and also having options.
But I'm not quite sure how many of us people are, like so dearly wanted to, keep our records on the internet or like on those websites to be forever. Like, so what if there are many people in the world who don't really care about if the data got lost? But of course, there are people who actually care about.
You could say the opposite. So you're asking like, what if people don't care if their data is lost, right? What if people want their data to be lost, but the company preserves it forever? It's having the option.
Okay, yeah. In other words, in order to make it like more accountable, being decentralized also increases accountability, is it?
Well, I don't know about that. I'll have to think about it. But actually, if something's on the internet, you can't really delete it anyway. It's already preserved. So.
With regards to blockchain, the other aspect also is security,
right?
Because it's actually much harder to actually fake a ledger if it's distributed. Because someone who would want to actually mess around with your transactions would actually change them on all the copies that are in the distribution. If there was only a central system, someone could come in and hack the ledger and just change it on that, and then you would lose your money or you would lose your transactions. But if it's distributed, then it's much more difficult to change the copies everywhere.
Okay, so it's a sharing.
The data is shared out there.
I don't know if you guys know, in the UK, it's in the news at the moment, the post office had a fraud scandal where they falsified a bunch of records. And lots of people were prosecuted for that, innocent people. There's an example.
Right.
If the data was public, it wouldn't have been a question.
If it was on blockchain,
yeah.
Sure.
All right, hey, that's about good time. So